Coffee, Current Events, and Politics. This is Jackie Lukman.
And this is Abdul Shahid Lukman.
Boy, yeah.
Oh, man. Talking about the song that we just opened up with, the intro song, is Stevie Wonder and Indian Irie called A Time to Love. And after going through this whole election cycle and the primaries, all of the anger, mean-spiritedness that's been happening as a result of these elections, yeah, we need a time to love. We need a time to do a lot of other things.
Yeah, and one of those things that we need to do in order to, address, correct, mitigate, deal with this mess that we have now after the election of 2016, that is the presidency of Donald Trump. I cannot believe I'm saying that.
I never thought I would say it. I never thought I would say it.
Well, yeah, it's a time to love, but it's also a time to really be honest and talk about what got us here. Mm-hmm. So today, we can't help but talk about how we got here. Really, we want to do or begin to do kind of a post-mortem on this election. And to really address some of the comments and the questions that have been coming up on social media, all social media platforms. Probably the comment sections in every article today is are just full of all kinds of blame. But we're going to talk about today whose fault it is really, because there are some things that are honestly not being said in establishment media that we've been saying all along that I think we really need to be real honest and clear about, so that we don't ever get to this point again.
And something yesterday when we were all shocked by the news that we actually may have a President Trump. The first thing that you and I said after our initial shock of a Trump presidency is the fact that this election cycle is going to be an election cycle that's going to be studied by political scientists and a lot of other people, historians, for years to come. Jackie, as you said, we're going to discuss a lot of the things surrounding this election. And we may do a couple of parts. We may not even do everything in this one video because there's so many layers to be examined, and there's so many layers to dissect. And we intend modestly, within our own abilities, to try to dissect these different layers. But there is so much. This is not a simple exercise in right or wrong or up and down. This was a complex election in a lot of ways. And so anyway, we're going to attempt the best that we can to try to give, what our analysis of it may be.
Yeah. So let's delve into this. And I want to say, hey, Darren, how you doing? Thanks for joining us, man.
And you're right, the Simpsons did call it first.
Yeah, they did. How messed up is that a cartoon called the national election?
Trump said it's rigged. It's rigged.
Well, didn't we say it first?
Yeah, it's rigged.
Nobody believed us. So all right, let's dig into this and let's tackle the obvious issue that was the very first thing a lot of the pundits said last night when it was clear that Trump was going to win. What was the first thing the pundits said? Where the first group of people they blamed.
Oh, well, third party.
Exactly.
Third party.
It was like a knee-jerk, oh my God, all these crazy protest votes, and they're the reason Clinton lost. And that narrative went on throughout the night. We stayed up watching election coverage until like four o'clock this morning. And that narrative went on for a long time until today, when it's kind of died down a little bit, when the numbers from the election have been analyzed and some really shocking truths were revealed. Now, for a long time, the Democrats have been bullying people away from voting for a third party. They've called them protest votes. They've said it's a wasted vote.
Right.
You're taking a vote away from Hillary Clinton. That was the ultimate argument against anybody, but especially former Sanders supporters and independents,
Right.
who are a growing number of the political voting or electorate from pursuing. But here's the problem with the Democrats' logic with that whole a third party vote takes away a vote from Hillary Clinton. According to the results last night, 5 million Americans voted for third party candidates. In some places, there were 3 third party candidates. In most states, there were 2, Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, the Libertarian Party and the Green Party. But in total, 5 million people voted for any number of third-party alternatives. That translates to the Libertarian Party getting about 3% of the vote, and the Green Party, sadly, getting about 1% of the vote. Now, they both did better than they did in 2012 by a very significant margin, where in 2012, I think the Green Party got like 0.6% of the vote.
Yeah, they said that Jill Stein received about maybe 1 million votes more than she did in 2012.
Right.
Which is not a small. That's not a small achievement.
Right.
For a party that really wasn't even. You figure in the last presidential election, the Green Party, unlike this election cycle, wasn't even on all of the state ballots.
Exactly, and just to get the Green Party onto the ballot, that took a petition effort.
It took a petition,
a nationwide petition effort. So that wasn't a small feat. And in 2012, the Libertarian Party, I think, got like 0.6% of the vote. So they did a lot better with no without the kind of organized push that the Green Party had.
Right.
But again, that was 5 million votes for Green Party candidates, any of them. And I know automatically people are saying, well, that's 5 million votes that Hillary Clinton didn't get. The problem with that argument is that 9 million registered Democrats.
That's right, 9.
Did not even vote
9 million.
at all.
Exactly.
So all day long and for most of the night on social media, and people are still saying this, and they're going to say it because they don't want to hear the truth. They don't want the numbers. They don't want to address them. People are going to keep blaming third-party voters for taking votes away from Hillary Clinton. But that's not what the problem was, because that was only 5 million votes. Because, see, if the 9 million registered Democrats had come out and voted for the Democratic nominee, the Democratic candidate, she would have won, even with the 5 million third-party votes. But it's the 9 million registered Democrats who stayed home who lost the election for Hillary Clinton. It wasn't third-party voters.
No, it wasn't at all. And let me tell you how this whole argument against third parties is so disingenuous. The two parties, first of all, and that's a good point that you brought up, Jackie, about Hillary won the popular vote. She won the popular vote. So, but she lost in the electoral college, and we all know about that. So it wasn't the fact that she didn't have votes. It wasn't the fact she didn't have enough votes. What happened was she was unable to turn out the Democratic voting voting block that Barack Obama did for. If you looked at the map and looked at the map where Hillary Clinton was losing, places that supported Barack Obama in 2012, she totally lost.
Yeah.
So they say, well, first thing they said is, well, she lost it because, and they were already alluding to the fact that black voter turnout in some of those areas was low. We're going to talk about that. The fact that Hispanics, now everybody made a big deal about the Hispanic vote.
Yeah.
And especially in the early voting process. Everybody was making a big deal about the Hispanic vote, and it was the assumption that this large Hispanic voting block and the numbers that they were automatically going to Clinton. If you listen to the news yesterday and when early voting started, maybe go back as far as last week when early voting started. Oh, in Florida and other places, they were talking about, oh man, the Hispanics, the Latinos, they're coming out.
Right.
But see, because you don't know who the Latinos are voting for, the press the press was making it seem that because Hispanics were coming out in these numbers, that they were coming out for Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Then in the same sentence, they were saying, but the blacks aren't coming out. African Americans, they're not coming out like they should. That's when they threw the cape on Obama and threw the cape on Michelle and said, look, there's something wrong with your folks. You need to go out there and talk to Pookie and Ray Ray.
Get Pookie Ray Ray and them in line.
Right. You need to go out there and talk to them, which is what Obama did. But we find out now, after the election is said and done, that Trump won more of the Hispanic vote than even Mitt Romney did back in 2012. And there's a reason for this, and Jackie and I are going to go into this. See, we make the assumptions in this country, and for whatever reasons we do, is that we always look at other groups as being monolithic. Whether it's African Americans, whether it's Latinos, even with white people.
That's true.
Because
we do.
Because the mistake that the press is making right now, Jackie, is that Trump got there purely on racism.
Right.
And that is a simplistic and wrong argument. And we're going to tell you why.
Yeah, it's a terrible, but that's how we have viewed people who were Trump supporters from the very beginning.
Right.
Honestly, that's how we viewed conservatives and all Republicans for a long time. That's not to say that there are no conservative racists.
Right.
That's not to say that there are no Republicans who are clearly, obviously, plainly racist. We know that there are.
Well, as we've seen during the primary, we also have so-called neoliberal racists too.
Exactly. Exactly. But I want to go back to the fact that Clinton lost the votes of the Obama coalition, right? Where Obama had significant success in some states in 2012.
Right.
Clinton had sometimes as much as 20 million fewer votes in those states. I mean, there were states, there were places in which Obama would win by like, I don't know, like 2-3 million votes, and Hillary Clinton's margin of victory in those states was like less than 1 million.
Right.
And when she lost those very same states that Obama won in 2012, when she lost them by more than 1 million votes. I mean, it wasn't her losses weren't close.
Right.
The only states where her wins were pretty significant were on the West Coast.
Right, and that was expected.
That was expected. You know, California, Washington, Nevada was a squeaker. But overall, like in 2012, Barack Obama had 69 million votes from Democrats. 69 million Democrats voted for Barack Obama. In this election, according to the polls that have been counted, Hillary Clinton has 55 million. Where the rest of those? Where were those 14 million Democrats? Where were they? Now, we just told you that 9 million Democrats didn't even vote at all. Registered Democrats didn't vote at all. So that leaves 5 million Democrats. Now, Democrats, they voted for Donald Trump. That's the other thing that has come out today, that the media is finally admitting, that they're finally talking about, hey, Kevin, that they're finally talking about the fact that the media's polls that they relied so heavily upon, that they used to bully people into voting for their inevitable candidate, their polls were wrong. Their polls touting the margin of victory
Right.
that Clinton supposedly had over Trump. Absolutely wrong. Why? Because people didn't want to admit that they were going to vote for Trump. That's why, because they didn't want to be shamed. They didn't want to be called racist. They didn't want to be called sexist. So when people called people to take these polls, people just lied. That's why. So, I mean, this whole third party stuff, the Democrats are going to, they're going to have to back off that. Because if they want to avoid, if they ever want to win again, if they ever want to win again, they're going to have to address the fact that they are the ones who are responsible for losing the support of Democrats. It is not the fault of third party voters who have taken votes away from the Democrats.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be honest with you. Trump really was a third party candidate.
Well, that's true. That's a good point.
Right. Trump,
I think that's a good point.
I mean, the Republican establishment from the very beginning. If we really look at this, and one of my Facebook friends, I don't want to take credit for this analysis, is one of my Facebook friends who said this in one of his posts, and look, you have to agree with it. This Trump's election was a big middle finger.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Right, to the establishment. Not just the Republican establishment. It was a big middle finger to even the Democratic establishment. When Bernie Sanders ran, that was the first big finger, middle finger to the establishment. When the Bernie supporters started gathering around, when Bernie was coming with his message, that was the first groundswell of the populist message. Remember, before they took it away from Bernie, you had Trump and Bernie, both populists, and both appealing to the underbelly, to the disenchantment of the voting populace.
Right.
Bernie Sanders, they both had different solutions to it, but everybody agreed that the rise of Bernie Sanders and the rise of Trump was due because Americans as a whole had it.
Yep.
Had it.
Done.
With these, and even though you can label Bernie as a career politician, Bernie didn't have the blood on his coat that a lot of the career politicians have. In fact, Bernie actually benefited from his obscurity. Because even though he was in Congress for a long time, most people didn't know who he was.
Right.
So when he came out and started with his campaign and his momentum, he basically, to a lot of people, especially millennials, was basically a brand new candidate. Millennials never heard of him.
Right.
A lot of people in the Democratic Party never heard of him. You know, and mainly because he wasn't a Democrat. He ran under the Democratic Party. But let's move this further along.
Right.
Trump was basically a third party candidate, and with the help of talk radio, that drum beated this anti-establishment vibe amongst the right. You listen to most of the right-wing radio when the primary was going on. Most of them was drum beating this sentiment towards the establishment. Those who didn't quickly fell in line when the pieces started being knocked off the board.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
So those who were supporting Bush, those who were supporting Cruz and Rubio and stuff, they quickly fell behind Trump when they seen where the momentum was going.
Yep, they did.
I heard this with Rush Limbaugh. I heard this with others. They sat back and knowing that their own livelihood depends upon where the direction the wind is blowing. They all fell in line behind Trump.
Right.
So Trump was taken seriously quite early on the GOP side than Bernie Sanders was on the left. So anyway, again, the point being, Jackie, about this looking to demonize people who voted third party. People who voted third party, which includes me, that's what democracy is, folks.
Right.
That's what democracy is. Democracy is voting for the person who you feel best represents your values and your interests. Exactly. That's what democracy is. Some of you people who are complaining about third parties couldn't live in Germany. You couldn't live in Switzerland. You couldn't live in other democratic countries where you have to sit up there and listen to 15, 20, maybe 30 people talk about what they, and all of them sharing the stage.
Right.
And talking about what they can offer to the voting population. So, Get a passport. Start to travel. Because that's Americans' biggest problem. Get a passport. Learn more about the world around you. Because that is true democracy. We don't even have to go overseas, Jackie. We could go back a couple hundred years ago when this country was younger and find out how many political parties there once was competing for the vote of actually landowning rich white men.
Well,
They were the only ones who could vote at the time.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Jackie. Why did Trump? What was the reasons? And I'm talking about legitimate reasons, not the lazy thinking man and woman's reasons for why Trump won. Let's talk about what really drove Trump to be president.
Okay, one of those issues, I think, is, as we said earlier, the way we tend to view conservative voters, just in general, still just talking about conservatives now. And part of that is absolutely the fault of the conservative party. Part of that is absolutely the fault of the GOP, because they've allowed that racist strain to grow and take root and be center stage and take control of governors' houses in the states, especially in the South. They obviously came out really strong against Obama. That racist strain of the GOP got stronger during Obama's campaigns, his first campaign in his administration. So, yeah, part of that is absolutely the fault of the GOP. The problem is that we tend, and by we I mean non-conservatives, and I'm talking about liberals, Democrats, progressives, independents, anybody who is not a conservative who aligns themselves with the Republican Party.
Right.
We tend to view people who live in the rural South or deep in the suburbs, in the rural-like areas of places like Pennsylvania and here in Maryland, who are white. We automatically think that they are, number one, racist, and number two, Republicans. We have made that mistake for so long. And in doing that, we have relegated them basically to the Republican Party.
Right.
Because a lot of those people actually aren't racists, and they actually aren't Republicans. They would like to support Democratic candidates but the Democrats have written them off.
Well, yeah, and that's where I'm glad you pointed it out. Because what I wanted to ask is, how much do you think that the elitist attitude of the Democratic Party that we witnessed so much, how do you think, how much of that do you think played a part in driving these people towards Trump?
Oh, I think it was everything. I think it was almost everything. I think the fact that when you have, first of all, what we're looking at is a political dynasty that the Democratic Party was trying to push in this country. And nobody wanted a political dynasty. Right. I don't care which party you belong to. I don't care what your political affiliation was. Even the Bushes, Barbara Bush didn't want another Bush in the White House.
Exactly.
She didn't even want a political dynasty. Right. And when we're talking about conservatives, whether they're white or black, we're talking about people who talk a lot about honoring the Constitution and upholding the values of the democracy that the founding fathers set forth. These are the last people who will support a political dynasty.
Right, exactly.
So the fact that the Democratic Party felt like it was just Hillary Clinton's time and she was owed the presidency, basically, and if we knew what was good for us, we had better vote for her. And they weren't just telling Democrats that. They told the entire country that.
Well, but this feeling of inevitability.
Yeah.
That was surrounding Hillary even before Bernie announced he was getting
Yes.
in. You know, I think the first crack in the wall of the Democratic support of Hillary was the fact that you had super delegates before anyone even announced that they were going to challenge Hillary. That were already on board. Supporting Hillary. I think that was the first crack in that wall.
I think that was the first crack in the wall that progressive voters like you and me and Sanders supporters and people who were already disaffected with the Democratic Party and with the establishment in general, but especially with the Democratic Party, we cried foul on that very early, because if the idea is that we're supposed to have a democracy and a representative government that we get to vote our representatives into, it seemed really wrong that before anybody voted, the people who decide, the people who are supposed to represent our interests basically decide for us before we tell them what we want. That was wrong. And I think for a lot of rural Southern white and rural Northern white voters, working class people, they looked at that and said, that is another example of the people with power jerking my chain.
And I agree with you about this whole rush, especially by a lot of the liberal left, to just write off Trump's success to what they call a white lash,
right? Right.
Or just white people just angry because of the black man in the White House for 8 years. Or white people who want to go back to the 1950s, and white folks who want to see blacks in chains again, and all this other kind of stuff. Now, mind you, there's a small element, and I believe a small element of the GOP that may harbor those type of sentiments. What the press is good at is taking that small element and magnifying it to make it seem like it's more than what it is. But this is my reason why Trump won. First of all, it wasn't just based on racism. What it was based on is the last 8 years of the Obama administration, which hasn't given us anything.
Exactly.
It was based upon bankers being rewarded with bailouts and not rewarded with jail sentences.
Right.
It was the fact that the Obama administration and the government said "F you" to mainstream America, but not offering similar bailout. In fact, and you and I were talking about this yesterday, when J.P. Morgan and all the bankers were fined, and they paid these billion-dollar fines.
Right.
Where did that money go?
Right.
Where did that money go? Where did the billions that J.P. Morgan and Chase and all the rest of them, where did that go? So that hasn't been answered. And then when the American people even question about where that money go, the American people are told, don't worry, we got that covered. Just don't worry about it. But how many people got their houses back?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Number 3, the black voter turnout.
Yeah.
I believe personally that the low voter turnout amongst black folks was, number 1, that this was one of the first elections that happened without the full protection of the Voting Rights Act.
I think that's
number 2. Number 2, and I'm saying this as an African American who keep my ear to the ground, per se, is the fact that black folks stayed home because Obama didn't give us anything. Black folks stayed home because when the only time that President Obama, who was very, very milquetoast when it came to racial issues in this country, President Obama, who had to be forced to speak out during the extrajudicial killings by police officers in this country, a Justice Department that was reluctant to go after Pantaleo in the Garner case, who did after Hillary was losing steam with the black voting class, then the Justice Department stepped in and said, we got to do something with the Eric Garner case. And the fact that black folks in this country have lost more ground under Obama than they have under presidents before them. So basically, you've seen a black population who know that they're being taken for granted. You have a black population who looked around and said, well, hell, if I didn't get nothing from the black man, I'm damn sure ain't going to get nothing from the white woman that's coming up in there.
Right.
And the fact that people forget that we know Hillary's record. You know, when it comes to mass incarceration, when it comes to her views on social programs, when it comes to how she treated the Haitians and her involvement in Haiti. Don't think that that's lost on black America. That she didn't garner the excitement because, believe it or not, we know her.
Exactly.
And lastly, and of course we can go on and on, let's look at this so-called white anger. The fact that when you looked at all of that red on that map, and I was a long distance truck driver, so I can tell you, all that red, when you travel through those lands, you see the abandoned steel mills. You see closed factories.
Right.
Now, say what you want about Trump, He may be a hypocrite when it comes to that because he gets most of his stuff made overseas. But what Trump wasn't, what Trump was right on, was that Trump seen that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Trump did in one of his debates that I remember, he told Hillary, he said, you go through Ohio, you go through Pennsylvania, and you see those rusted out steel mills. Yep. Believe it or not, that spoke to those people. Yes. But what did we do on the left? What did the left do? The left said to us, oh, it's about time we put a woman in the office. Yep. Oh, it's about time that we broke that glass. And let me tell you something. People who don't have jobs, people who see their standard of living going up could give a damn about having a woman in the White House. Yep. When folks look out and they see that they're working longer hours for lesser pay, when folks look that they can't afford to send their kids to school, when folks look that they can't even have a decent family life because they have to work 2 or 3 jobs. The husband comes home after working 2 jobs, the wife goes out and have to work the 2 jobs, and that people can't take vacations anymore. Right. So that's what people are looking at. People don't give a damn about glass ceilings breaking. All they want to do is make sure that they can afford the ceiling from which they live under. And you want to know why Trump won? Because Trump stayed on that message. Yep. Now, we don't know how he's going to govern. But to the people who got tired of being lied to, the people who got tired of giving more money to Israel and foreign nations, and we can't even build a damn bridge in this country, that's what spoke to the people of the country. And that's what Trump, that's what propelled Trump to be in that White House in January. That's it. Amen. Amen. You're right, Patrick. Testify, brother. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Deborah. Hey, CJ. Look, man, we can... I'm seeing online today all the people talking about, oh my God, our country is so helplessly divided. How can we unite now after this election has divided us? We addressed this. I remember us talking about this on our Blog Talk Radio show after 2012, when people were saying the same thing about all the racist stuff that was coming out about Barack Obama. And we said then, it's not that this election has divided this country. Right. It is that when you're talking about just the issue of race, when you're only talking about the issue of race, this country has always been divided because that's how this country was created. It was created to be divided along those lines, and we've never addressed that. But when you take away the issue of race, all right, when you stop calling the white working class people in the Midwest and in the South and in the suburban and rural East and in the North and in the northern states, when you stop calling them racists because they supported Donald Trump, and you listen to what they say about why they voted for him. Exactly. You hear, well, here's what's interesting. You hear the exact same thing from the white people who you claim voted for Donald Trump because they were racist. They say the same thing that black people say for why they didn't vote for Clinton. That's right. Because they felt left out of the process. They felt like nobody in Washington cared about them. Their standard of living has gone down. There are no jobs in their communities. They have crappy health care. The ACA is a disaster for too many people. I'm not saying it hasn't done any good. But for too many people, it didn't do enough good. That's right. So you've got, how can you just call all of these people who voted for Donald Trump a bunch of racists when they are telling you, look, I understand that the man said some really awful things about black people and Muslims. And yes, that was some really awful stuff. He said some awful things about women. But here's the thing. I don't have a job. Exactly. I don't have a job that pays me enough money to pay our mortgage and to send our college-age kids to school without them having to take out hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans that they are going to have to pay off for the rest of their lives. We don't have the standard of living that even our grandparents had that was able to help our parents build the life that they had.
Our parents couldn't do for us what our grandparents could do for them. And we're trying to figure out when somebody in Washington is going to fix that for us.
That's right. That's right.
And nobody is answering these people. So, yeah, there are some white people who are absolutely racist, who just are so glad that they got to vote for a candidate who talked like their local grand wizard. Yes, there are some of those people. But I really, really believe that most of the white working class voters who voted for Donald Trump did it because he stayed on that message.
He did. He did.
Building the infrastructure of this country, spending the money on building the infrastructure of this country.
Which was the message that Obama had.
Yep.
In the last 8 years. Mm-hmm. The so-called and the one. But I wanted to address the racist part real quick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because the reason why racism wasn't the sole catalyst or the sole motivation for people voting for Trump is the fact that if that was the case, Obama would have never been president.
Let's make that point.
Obama would have never been president because we were coming out of a recession under George W. Bush. If it was just based on white nationalism, as the press is trying to make us believe that just white nationalism alone done this, then white people would have said, do or die, we'll stick with the Republican Party no matter what happened because we don't want the black man in office. That didn't happen twice.
Right.
Obama could have never been president both times without a large white population voting for him.
Exactly.
Not enough blacks. We're only
Right.
13%.
Right.
Hispanics about 14% now. There's not enough minorities in this country, so-called minorities. I don't like that word. But there's not enough so-called minorities in this country that could have put Obama in the White House without white people backing him. So that racism argument alone is dead because if it was just about white nationalism, white folks would have rallied around, especially when Barack Obama was running. White folks as a whole would have just held on to the Republican Party no matter where it led. But we found out that didn't happen. We found out that Mitt Romney didn't even do as well as Trump did in a lot of the demographics. You know, so you either have to assume that those demographics 4 years ago either didn't vote or they voted for Obama or whatever, you know.
Right.
But you're right, Jackie. I mean, we have to really understand that people are people. And working people especially are all suffering in this country. That is what the Democratic Party didn't really listen to. Because I've heard one pundit, and I had to agree with this pundit that I heard early on the news today, say that when those coal miners in West Virginia was explaining to Hillary Clinton, you know, even though I understand that climate change is a big problem, coal, fossil fuels is, you know, I believe that is one of the ways that we're creating climate change.
Yeah.
But you got places like West Virginia where coal mining is a big industry there.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only thing that's there.
And when you go to those people and you tell them, oh, well, it sucks to be you. If I become president, I'm closing it. And we'll just have to train you how to do something else. That may have been the reality, but you could have couched that better. And I think that that's what happens when you have politicians like the Clintons who've been in power too long and they're out of touch with what goes on in America because, see, when you went out into those coal miners in Kentucky and West Virginia and places and said to them, I'm sorry, the climate is heating up and you guys are what's responsible. We're closing these coal mines down. We're going to put a few windmills and teach you how to turn the crank. You know what I mean? First of all, the green jobs is the stuff with Deborah Allen said they didn't get a good education there. So Deborah, you're right.
That's a good
you're
point.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, you know, it's like a domino effect, Jackie. Even in the inner cities, and thank you for that, Deborah, because even in the inner cities, we're seeing the same thing. You disinvested in the school system.
That's
in the
right.
Inner cities,
in the public school
system. You disinvested in all of those programs after school programs and all educational programs.
Vocational
right,
programs.
vocational programs. And then when they don't exist no more, and then the economy is changing from a manufacturing economy to a more high-tech economy, now we're looking around saying, wow, we don't have the people here that can fill the jobs here. And then when those people, as Jackie and I seen in Baltimore, when we went to Baltimore and spoke to those kids up there, when those kids didn't ask for welfare.
Nope.
When we interviewed those kids during the Freddie Gray incident, those kids up there wasn't asking for welfare. They wasn't asking for handouts. We had kids in Baltimore saying, all I want to do, man, is go to work.
Yep.
All I want to do is be able to make a living. All I want to be able to do is this. But because Democrats, no one wants to take responsibility for these cities, which mostly Democrats have been running for the last 30 years, 40 years that I can remember. They don't want to take responsibility for the conditions of these cities. And so what happens when we started putting more money into policing, and those populations were getting restless, then we said, well, we might as well, then we allow Republicans and stuff to start convincing everybody to build more prisons.
Right.
And the Democrats, instead of advocating for the people, went right along with this whole social control experiment. So the thing of it is the fact that, you're right, Jackie, we cannot look at Trump's victory as just riding the surf wave of white nationalism and racism.
That's right. That's right. Woo, go ahead. Preach, Pastor. Preach,
oh.
Pastor. Go ahead, Pastor.
Well.
Look, man, I'm so... I would like to say that I'm surprised at the outcome of this election, because I remember in Philadelphia, when we were standing in the streets in during that hot ass weekend, I thought I was gonna burst into flames. It was so stinking hot out there. But we were out there standing in pools of sweat, waiting for the roll call to come in, and we were cheering the states that Sanders won.
Right. Yes,
and every state he lost, we knew that they were pretty much stolen from him. And we cried, and then the Sanders delegates walked out of the convention in solidarity and in protest. And that was the moment that independents and a lot of Democrats woke up and said, you know what, screw this. This is not working. This isn't democracy. This isn't my party, and I'm not going to continue to support this.
Right.
We knew before then, that Hillary Clinton could not beat any Republican candidate. We knew it because, like you said, we knew who she was. We knew who Hillary Clinton was from the beginning.
Yep.
When this next election cycle came around, remember you and I were sitting there talking, and we were like, I wonder if Miss Hillary's going to run again.
Right.
Because we knew she was. Because we knew that the Clintons have always been playing chess. Her running for Senate in New York, they didn't move to New York because they didn't have anything better to do.
Right.
They moved to New York so that Hillary Clinton could run for a Senate office, so she could have experience in the Senate, so that she could say that she had experience when she ran for president. That's why they did it.
Right. And her experience argument lost. You know, she used experience against Obama and lost. And now she used experience against Trump and lost.
Because, see, with Obama, the reason... Going right back to the black vote. When she and her husband railed against Obama's experience in 2008, they couched it in terms of him not having enough experience to have the right to run against Clinton, and not having enough experience to have the right to be president. And black folks did not like that. We did not like the fact that, wait a minute, this man has been in the Senate in Illinois for 8 years. He's been in the United States Senate for 8 years.
Right.
So he had 16 years of legislative experience. How can you say how much experience does a black man need to have before he's qualified to run against y'all? I don't understand what he has to say. That's what we were saying in 2008.
And we also know, because as Americans, we have a historical, we have a culture that we can rely on historically. Black folks understood where that word experience was coming from.
Right. How it
So
was used.
yeah, how it was used. You know, we knew what that code word meant.
Yep.
We knew that when they said experience, many of us who remember going into certain jobs and being dismissed by the word experience. Not that you couldn't do the job. The fact they really didn't want you there, but they couldn't say they didn't want you there.
Right.
So they counted in experience. Right. So we understood where that was coming from. And so now she comes up against Trump, and she said, well, Trump does, you know, everybody was saying Trump doesn't have the temperament. One of the things that, and I was just thinking about this, is that going back to the black vote again, you know, one of the missed opportunities that Hillary had was, first of all, one of the mistakes that she made and the DNC made was not only taking black folks for granted, but the DNC has not updated its black playbook.
No.
And I'm going to tell you why. The black playbook in the DNC is, okay, this is what we got to do. We got to go to a few churches. Hillary Clinton, come on, man. I mean, you can say what you want, man, but you know, black folk, man, we're not ignorant, we're not stupid. So when you go to a church and you sit up there and say, I ain't no ways tired. I've come too far to travel this far. Nobody told me that the way will be easy.
And you got folks.
I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. And it's like, what?
And you got black folks sitting in the pews of the church going,
yeah. And then you go on a popular radio show, mind you now, popular amongst millennial blacks. You know, and then you go on there and you say, hey, I'm not going to talk to you people about policy, but I got hot sauce in my bag.
I don't have jobs for you.
But
I don't have quality education for you.
Right.
I don't have student loan debt, student loan relief for you. I don't have assistance. I don't have affordable housing for you. I don't have enforcement of equal employment opportunity laws for you.
Right. But I got hot sauce.
I got hot sauce in my purse. Yeah.
Right. And then what happens is they dust off the Black Congressional Caucus. Because, see, they keep them in the crypt for every 4 years. So what happens is they get these old civil rights icons that they keep in what they call it? A cryogenic chamber.
Yeah, the cryogenic.
Yeah, so they got a secret chamber, cryogenic chamber, where they keep the old civil rights leaders, you know. And so every time they go out for, you know, when a big election comes up, they go in this chamber and they dust them off, they thaw them out, and they go and they parade them around. But see the problem is the fact that that playbook is outdated, because the Congressional Black Caucus, like a lot of the establishment black civil rights leaders, no longer have influence on the younger black voters. They don't have influence. It's not that they're not respected, but they don't have the influence, because we're what 50 years away from the civil rights era.
Yep.
So you have two generations that have grown up not having any familiarity with the civil rights generation. Number three, let's talk about Trump. Trump did something that, even though I wasn't his supporter, I respected him for it.
What was that?
And what Trump did, he went to Black America. He didn't talk about having hot sauce. He did go to a few black churches, but guess what he did when he went to the black church?
What did he do?
He went to a black church in Detroit and told them, oh yeah, I'll deal with your crime problem. Stop and frisk.
And see,
he said that in the black church.
He did, but see, he knew which black church to go to.
Right now. I had to say that because what I'm saying is, people, and we're all adults here, most of us, even if you say the dumbest ass thing, most of us can at least respect your honesty.
Well,
you know what I mean? You know, it's like, okay, he said that,
he said
but I respect that he didn't lie to me.
He said he was going to keep violating our rights. Well, all right.
So anyway, we can respect as a community, even though a lot of us didn't like him saying that, but most people respected that he at least said it. Number two is the fact that he had something that the Democrats didn't even think about coming up with, not even Obama.
What was that?
He said a contract with Black America.
Really?
Trump said that. See, that's the thing. People were so busy paying attention to his buffoonery, they didn't listen that he said, I have a contract with Black America. And that's when he went up on his press conference and said, look, you guys y'all been pimped by the Democratic Party for the last 30 years. Why not let me pimp you? Basically, that's what he was saying. But he was talking about, he actually reached out to the black community when he said, look, he said, you guys been giving these people a shot. And you know, the Democratic Party should have been embarrassed. That's like somebody coming over to your team and you have your most loyal and productive players. And somebody from your opposing team come over there and be like, you know what? You ain't being appreciated over here. You need to come play for me. You know, or we talk about hostile takeovers, anything like that. You people can figure it out. But what I'm saying is, unlike his predecessors who ran for president in the GOP, who did not actively court African American votes.
That's right.
Trump did.
Right.
Trump did. And I guarantee you that there were a lot of black folks, they ain't gonna admit it to you and me, but there were some black folks who said, you know what? When I get in that voting booth, I was going to vote for Hillary, but I think I might give this guy Trump a chance. Now, they won't talk about that at Thanksgiving.
No.
That's not going to be a conversation they're going to talk, because they
want somebody to pass them the yams.
Right,
They don't want to be wearing them joints.
They don't want no problems at Thanksgiving.
No.
But I'm going to tell you something. Trump did something that Hillary and the Democrats have stopped doing for a long time. They've stopped courting their most loyal voting bloc, which is African American votes. Yep. They just assume that you ain't gonna go over there to them, so you ain't got no choice but to go for us. And I'm telling you that the black folks who didn't vote, that was more of an indictment for Obama than it was for Hillary.
Thank you for bringing that up. That is absolutely right. Hey Ken, thanks for joining us. We see you. Hey Patrick, thank you for joining us. The whole uproar over what Trump said to black voters, it really kind of ticked us off, right? Because we felt like all of the black talking heads made such a big deal about what he said about, the black neighborhoods, they're terrible. You can't go,
right.
You can't go down to the corner store without getting shot.
Right.
Okay, that was hyperbolic. That was an exaggeration.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad, Donald. But it's Donald Trump. How do you cannot expect him to say anything other than the most exaggerated thing about anything ever, because it's Donald Trump and that's what he does.
That's right.
But here's the thing that kind of pissed me off about black pundits for the Democratic Party in the way they slammed that press conference, because Donald Trump didn't actually say anything about the issues that black people face in our communities that we haven't been talking about for how long now?
Right.
We've been talking about the crime in our communities that we don't get help for, that we've been trying to fight, that people act like we don't care about. How many times have we talked about that on our show, on our social media networks, and in church? We go to the community meetings that we go to, and we see how few people come out from the communities, and we see the fact that the media is never there.
Right.
But you let somebody get shot, and all of a sudden, everybody knows where we live.
That's right.
So we've been frustrated with that in our own communities. You ask anybody who lives in the south side of Chicago, the hell that they've been going through there, and the community groups that have been trying to fight against that, getting no help from the Democratic administration of Chicago, getting no help from the White House, getting no help from anybody. So we've talked about these things. Exactly. So yeah, he exaggerated and went a little crazy with the "we can't get shot." We can't go to the corner store to get some bread without getting shot comment. Yeah, that was too much. But he was telling the truth about the crime that many black people in many of our communities are struggling with, that we need help with. Now, stop and frisk is not the answer. It's just not.
We're not going to allow that.
We're not going to allow that. And like I said, he knew which black church to go to. Because, see, he went to the black middle class church where you got a whole lot of middle class and upper class bougie black people who love Jesus, but they hate poor black people. But again,
it's like when we started off the video by talking, no group is monolithic.
Exactly. And this goes back, and we're going to have to close because we've run out of time. So we're obviously going to have to do a part 2 and maybe even 3. Obviously, that ought to tell you that your belief that Donald Trump is either ignorant, stupid, or crazy is completely, we told you he wasn't from the beginning. We told you this man wasn't stupid. He knew who to go to and say that mess to.
Exactly.
He knew doggone well he could not come down to our church and with our pastor and talk about some stop and frisk. He couldn't go to a little storefront church in the poorest neighborhood in the south side of Chicago.
Yep.
He couldn't go to a church in Harlem and say, I'm going to do, heck.
No.
He did. People, those church people would have been locked up that day for running Donald Trump out of there if he had gone to some church in Harlem talking about stop and frisk. He knew what church to go to. But again, when he talked about bringing jobs back, like you said, he's absolutely hypocritical, because this is a man who has a clothing line that used to be in Macy's department stores. He got himself kicked out of Macy's. But he has a clothing line that used to be featured in Macy's department stores, and his clothing line is made in China and Mexico. So this whole thing about bringing jobs back to America, why don't you start by bringing your jobs back to America? How about that? Yeah, he's a hypocrite on that, but he went to black people and said straight up, look, you need jobs. I'm going to bring jobs back.
Yeah, that's basically what he said.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what have we been, like we just said, we went to Baltimore after the Freddie Gray uprising. It was less than a week after that uprising that we went to Baltimore. And we talked to those kids who were still just so frustrated and angry that once again, the police in Baltimore has taken the life of one of them, and nobody gets punished for it, and then people are blaming them for being lazy and being criminals and not wanting this and wanting handouts. And they were so glad to have somebody listen to them. And every single one of those kids said, man, we just want a job. We just want to be able to get up and go to work and go to a job where we make decent money so we can build a future for ourselves, so that we can have something to look forward to, so we can buy nice things, so we can support our families, man. That's all we want. But people won't give us an opportunity. All they do is they come in our neighborhoods, they disrespect us, they take from us, they make things impossible for us to afford. Then they bring these cops in here who don't live here, don't like us, think that we are the enemy, think we're garbage. They bring them in here to control us, and they end up killing us. Then the country blames us for it. So all Donald Trump had to do was stand in front of these hurting people who have said, we need jobs. And they've been telling the black president that for 8 years. We need jobs, Mr. President. The unemployment rate among black people is twice as high as that among white people. And that's true even among college-educated black people. Has been for the past 50 years. Black people have been screaming that we need jobs and we need good-paying jobs. Donald Trump actually did some research. Had Barack Obama passed a comprehensive jobs bill first, before he passed health care reform, this election may have turned out differently in regard to black voter support for Hillary Clinton.
Right. But see, you can't do that when you have a government and a Congress, when you have a president and Congress that's bought and paid for.
Right.
And I agree with you. And I know we'll end on this, but President Obama definitely blew his political capital in the first term when he had the Senate and House majority. And he could have done anything he wanted. And had he would have took his political capital, and instead of wasting it on his tugging back and forth for health care, if he would have had this even if he bailed out Main Street, and if he would have had just as enough an aggressive bailout for Wall Street, if he had an aggressive bailout for Main Street, we might be on a different trajectory right now.
Yeah.
Who's to know?
Yeah.
But you're right, though. We're going to have to revisit this. But
I know.
Look, this election is going to be studied for generations, for years to come.
Man.
But look, we want to know what you think.
Yes, we
thank
do.
you for the comments. Thanks for joining us.
Thank y'all.
And check us out on YouTube and Twitter and all the other kind of social media stuff that we have out there. And we really appreciate you being with us.
Yeah,
also, check out Real Progressives and look for us and others content on that page too.
Yep. So on Twitter, we are Luqman Nation 1, LUQMAN Nation, the number 1. You are on Coffee, Current Events, and Politics and Luqman Nation. On Facebook, check our podcast of this broadcast out on Spreaker. It will be posted soon. And we are going to schedule the follow-up of this broadcast very, very soon. Stay tuned. Thank you for joining us in Coffee, Current Events, and Politics. In Luqman Nation, breathe, y'all, breathe.
We'll be all right.
We the people
Take care.
are the ones who gonna have to fight. We used to say, which side are you on? Which side are you on? The truth is, we're in so much debt that the only way out is revolution or war. So now the question is, which side are you on? On.